welcome back. Today I'm going to show you how I make my galaxy backgrounds using the Distress Oxide inks. There are numerous ways to make a galaxy background. This is my favorite because I love working with the Distress Oxide inks. You can also use watercolors, you can use regular Distress ink. Today we're just going to talk about the Distress Oxide ink. I'll probably show off all the others eventually at one point or another. This is pretty much my finished project here, and I absolutely love. I'm using a 5.5 by 4.25 piece of paper. These particular ones that I'm making right now are going to be cut down even further, and they're going to be made into panels for a pocket letter. But I decided to show off just standard A2 sized card panels today. You could do them pretty much in any size that you wanted. Materials that I'm using today my regular card stock that I get from Staples. It's 110 pound white card stock. I find that it holds up well. We are going to be using a little water from a mister, just a little bit of water though. If I was going to use any more water than that, I would go right to watercolor paper, but I'm not. I'm going to use this cardstock, which I'm familiar enough with not to over soak it. It is going to leave our final project a bit crinkly, which is completely normal. If I cared, I would run this through my Cuttlebug, my die cut machine, just to help flatten it out, or I would leave it underneath a happy book for a couple of days, but I don't. It's going to be well covered with adhesive on the back and cut down and glued onto something else, so I'm not worried about the tiny little bit of wrinkle wave that we're getting out of this. So the other materials that I'm using, aside from my cardstock, my mister, you do not need a Ranger mister. I've even used like the spray bottle that we use for the cats. That would be fine too. I'm using ink blending tools and of course the foams. With ink blending tools, my Distress Oxide inks, I'm going with black soot. I go through a lot of black soot. I've just recently acquired a re-inker. Thank goodness. I've re-inked it this morning. It seems to be working well. Pick anywhere, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 colors. I'm using 6 colors today because I'm insane and I can't choose. These are my favorites. This isn't my favorite. These are my favorites and I couldn't choose between them, so I decided to take them all. My favorite in the yellow family is the Squeeze Lemonade, which is not available in the Oxide ink yet, so I'm using Fossilized Amber as a substitute. We also have Spice Marmalade, Picked Raspberry, Peacock Feathers, Seedless Preserves, and Salty Ocean. So I'm using those 6 colors, excuse me, plus the black soot, the re-inkers. I'm also going to use my heat tool, which is completely optional. You don't need this. I'm just using this today to help speed up the drying process in between so that I can get this all done in a video. I've got my cardstock all ready. Let's see, I have some baby wipes for my work surface. I don't use a craft sheet. I just ink right directly on my desk, so that'll help me to clean off my desk in between batches of stuff. Like right now, I've got a piece of dry paper towel to help dry that up really fast, and also for helping to clean up any acrylic paint mess. For the stars, it's not ideal. I need to find a better way to do this because I don't like how translucent some of my stars come out with this, but I'm using just regular white acrylic paint. I believe this came from Walmart, but you can get it pretty much anywhere. It's between 50 cents and $1 a bottle. I mix an equal amount of the acrylic paint and water, just a tiny little bit, maybe enough to make a teaspoon in my painting cup here, and I've got a paintbrush. It doesn't seem to matter what proportion of paint I use to water. I still am just not getting it right. What I'm looking for is something to flick onto my backgrounds to make it look like stars. This, again, it comes out a little bit too translucent. I'm not a big fan of it. I do know of another product, Copic White, which I've seen used in videos before. It looks beautiful. It's opaque. It's also extremely expensive. I've priced it out. It's about $15 for the bottle. I don't know if I care enough to wing for it, but certainly if you have Copic White, definitely use it. Try using another kind of paint. Anything else, I'm not a huge fan of the acrylic paint, but that's what I have, so that's what I use. And of course, just an acrylic block to flick the paint off of, which can be washed in the sink very easily after this. I will save, it's a huge mess maker as is. I've already done a few. I will save the flicking the white paint until last because I want to get everything else off the area and then wash it. So I think if I've missed anything else, I'll just let you know as we go along what we have. Oh, a white gel pen for the final touch. We'll get there when we get there. So to get started, I used all 6 colors to ink on my paper. I'm probably not going to show all 6 colors, but I just basically kind of, I had 6 colors, so I kind of visually divided in my head 6 different spots on the paper for colors, and I want to make sure that I'm getting all 6 colors on the page. And I'm laying down a pretty thick coat. When I make my background anything, I usually do a bunch of them so I can have some on hand. You know, do a batch so that I don't have to come back and do some later. I think that I'm doing it wrong, but I think I put too much pressure on my fingers when I'm using my distress inks, and I get these huge blisters on my fingers when I do this project. So again, I'm probably not doing it right. You can put a nice light coat on. I'm impatient and I want to put a nice thick coat. I like a nice thick coat of the ink on here because I love the way that it looks when you put the water on. All of my Velcro things are falling off at once. I'm going to have to tend to that later. Now moving on to the Salty Ocean. A little overlap is fine. Not going to sweat it. I don't have a lot of the ink tools yet, the blending tools yet. I think I have 4, so that's why I have to switch. I would eventually like to get quite a few more. I don't think I'm insane enough to want, you know, to need a blending tool for every color, but I would like a few more because it is a little bit irritating to have to switch back and forth when you're in the middle of a project, especially having to touch the foam. My fingers are getting even yuckier. I purposely waited. I haven't, it's not gross, but I haven't showered yet this morning. I purposely waited, held off on that because I knew I was going to be doing this and I wanted to get it over with. And I did a haul video earlier this morning, and I changed into a crappy shirt that I don't care if I get stained. So okay, so anyway, so I have my 6 colors down on 6 different spots on my page. The colors are still a little wet. The Distress Oxide inks are a hybrid ink. It's a mixture of dye and pigment ink, so it takes a little bit longer to dry. You could hit it with your heat tool if you want. I don't care. We're gonna move right on to the black soot phase. I have an ink blender tool for my black specifically for making these galaxy backgrounds because it does pick up a little bit of the color on the blending tool. I don't care. So with the black, we're going to put the black directly onto the color, but we're going to sort of swirl it on and purposely leave a couple of spaces, like on these examples, where the black is not going to cover the color. So I like to try to aim for to make sure at least one little spot of each color is not getting covered. So this is what this is going to look like more or less as soon as I'm done. So I just kind of start in one area and I'm putting pressure on. I like to get it really nice and dark and inky. Really inky. I love these color combinations. So it's a little ambitious doing all 6 colors that I like, but it's totally doable. So as you can see, I've not covered up everything. So that is the first step, getting the first layer of color on. What I like to do next is I like to spray them Let me clean up my table just a wee bit here. Oh, I dropped my dry paper towel on the floor. That wasn't smart, and I'm gonna need a fresh baby wipe, I think. Okay, so the next step that I like to do is spritz these with some water. From my mister here, and I'm just going to do a very light mist on each page. You could leave it, you can let it sit, go do a chore, go do something else. It's such a light layer that it would dry on its own fairly quickly anyway. I'm speeding it up with my heat tool. This heat tool is from Derice. I believe it was about $15 from Consumer Crafts. There are better rated and more pricey heat tools on the market. This one I've never had an issue with in the several years that I've owned it. It works just fine. This is not the same thing as a hairdryer. This is shooting out some very concentrated high levels of heat. This is also the same tool that I use for my heat embossing. We're just using it to dry the paper. Boom, that's done. Okay, I could leave it here. This is also the sample that I did. This is after one spray, so this is the same thing as all these. I could leave it here. I take it further. I'm going to put a second coat of the black soot on top of this. And this is what it's going to end up looking like, more or less, of course, after my second coat. So what I do is pretty much the exact same thing that I did the first time. I'm getting it really inky. I'm applying the ink directly over where I put it, kind of like the same thickness, the same layer, and you'll see that the colors are building up even more the second time than it did the second time. These distress oxides are beautiful. All of the color, this is the reason why I prefer them over watercolors. All of the beautiful colors being layered up. Now the key with this second coat that I've learned, and I've tried this many times, is it's still a little too bright. Some of these colors popping out a little too bright. So I put my second black coat on where I did before. I'm going to take a light layer of black, kind of like gray, and I'm just going to very lightly, get this back into the camera. I'm just going to very lightly cover the color, not even cover, but just put a very light, thin layer of gray over those colors. And you think, oh no, you're ruining it. No, I am not, I promise. So just a light layer of gray over the colors. Getting it inky, inking the same spots that I did before, going as heavy as I can on the ink. And now I'm just going to very quickly go back with a light layer of making it gray, or a light layer of the black to go over the color just to gray it out slightly. And then boom. Again. Thick black on the spaces that we've already done before. This is an optional step. Light coverage over the colors. I have to make quite a few of these, so I apologize for taking up your time on these, but maybe it'll help seeing it go over and over again. Also, one of the advantages to making quite a few of them at the same time is that I'm more or less replicating the same thing, which it does make it a little bit easier. It takes some of the thought out of producing them. Like when I made the big batch before I started filming to get them all prepped, is I kind of put the colors, the same colors in the exact spot on each page. Excuse me, still dealing with my cold here in my nose and my sinuses. So it kind of took the guesswork out of, you know, how I was going to configure all of the next ones down the line. Is like, nope, I'm just going to put all the colors in the exact same place, and I went through and, you know, did the pink on all of them, and then I did the orange on all of them, and so on and so forth. So this is really easy to mass produce. And I'm covering the color a little bit. Boom. Okay, so what next? Again, this is with one spray and the second coat, so that's the same thing as this now. Now we're actually done with the black, so I'm going to seal that up and set it aside. So we're going to spray it and dry it again, and this is what it'll look like. This is with 2 coats of the ink and 2 sprays. So you can see some of that color poking through, and I don't know if you can pick up on the camera, but the water where it dries, because the Distress Oxide reacts to water, is lightening up those areas, and it's really quite beautiful. This one I think came out a little bit darker than ideal. We'll see how the other ones come out. Oh, I almost reached for the wrong thing. One thing you could consider too is using, instead of some water for the second coat, is using your shimmer spritz. That might be quite lovely as well. In fact, why don't I'll do that last. I'll do a couple with the shimmer spritz so we can see how that comes out. My mister is not the greatest. I don't know if it's just a default with the mister or if it's just not full enough, and that's why, but sometimes I have to prime it with my finger to get it to work. Okay, so here's 4 with the water. Let's try that really quick. I don't know if you can pick up on camera, but just the heat is kind of moving that color around a little bit, which is still kind of maintaining a watercolor type property to it. And it's a lot of fun. These are a lot of fun to make. Once you get a little practice in them, you'll be whipping them out without even thinking about it. And again, mass produce them and keeps them on hand so that you have them. It makes a mess. It's a lot of fun, but it makes a mess. And especially if you're a card maker or do any other kind of craft where you might use a lot of these on a regular basis, it never hurts to keep them in stock. Okay, so that's what it looks like on the second coat, so we're going to add that there. These are the 2. I'm going to use some of my shimmer spritz. I'm going to give it a really good shake. I'm going to use shimmer spritz instead of water for this second coat. And then obviously I'm going to have to clean the desk so that we don't get glitter everywhere. I love this shimmer spritz, but it's messy. Definitely don't do it on your desk. Don't do what I did. It wouldn't fit on camera, but I do have the lid to a banker's box that I'll put my project in and take it out on the porch and then spritz it, so that I don't have to expose my house to the glitter. Yeah. I like glitter as much as the next person, but it does make a mess. And I still have a lot of nice clothing pieces from my eBay inventory still in the house, and I'm really careful about my glitter because if that touches something nice, it almost never comes off. It's almost impossible to get glitter out of stuff. Okay, I don't know if you're going to catch that, but it is quite beautiful with the shimmer spritz. I don't know if I turn on the light over here, if that's going to help. That is absolutely going to help a little bit, maybe. How beautiful that is. Just kind of a nice fun change with the shimmer spritz. So I'm going to very quickly wipe this glitter off this area because it is evil. It is evil. Okay. So we've got many with water and 2 with the shimmer spritz. All right, so the last step is going to be to flick on some of that acrylic paint to make it look like stars, or the second to last step, because there's something else that I can do beyond that. So I have my acrylic paint in my water mix. This isn't great, but this is what I have, so this is what I'm going with. I do find, as Christina Werner suggests, that I do get a lot more control flicking off of an acrylic block instead of using my finger. So I'm going to go up off the paper, and I'm just flicking the paint off the edge of the acrylic block onto my project. I'm going to get all sorts of different sizes of flicks, and that's fine. Look at that. I just made a mess. I made a big blob, and I'm gonna sort of fix that a little bit. Now I'm just making a mess all over the place. I'm gonna take my dry paper towel and just kind of sop up the blob. And it kind of blends in. It kind of looks like I meant to do that. So we're just going to leave it like that. Worst case scenario, those spots that I mess up on will get covered with some kind of an embellishment or a die cut, as if I'm making a card, or I'll just cut them out. If I'm using it to cut up the paper, I'll just cut that part out. There's nothing so bad about this that you can mess up too much that it's completely unusable. So even if you don't like the way something is looking, keep going. You saw with all the different layers of ink, this Oxide ink that we're putting on here, it looked like crap, but that one's a little too big. So these are the ones with the glitter on them. We'll do a quick cleanup to try to prevent some of that paint from drying too much on the desk here. And we'll move on to another one. So that's pretty much it. A couple of different things that you could do. I would encourage anyone to just experiment. Think of some things that you can do with your color combinations and stuff. And maybe not mess up like so much like I am. I would normally be doing this outside or a little higher up maybe, so that things wouldn't be falling quite as much, and that's why I'm messing up here. These are going to be cut down. I'm not too picky about these. I just hope if a big splotch is coming, it's going to fall on the desk and not the paper. Okay, so I won't sit here and bore you through all of them. Just make sure that while it's wet, if you have any oopsies, you're dabbing it up and you're not letting it sit. You make the oopsie, you dab it up, and then it's not a big deal. And you can kind of see it looks intentional. It looks like just a puff of gas or whatever in space, so it looks fine. Let me grab the dry one here. So this is kind of the unofficial last step that I'll do, and this is only because my acrylic water combo isn't all that super. I want some really bright white spots on here. So I'll just take my white jelly roll pen and color in a few white stars that are a lot, of course my pen is now being tricky, that are a lot brighter. There we go. And will appear a lot closer. So that way it kind of looks like we have many different layers of stars in the sky. But I absolutely love that look. It's gorgeous. And you can see on this one even there were a couple of larger blobs and I just quickly sopped them up. But it looks intentional. It looks like a space scene. So that is with 2 layers of color and water. Here's the one with the second layer. We use shimmer spray. I don't know if my jelly pen would go over the shimmer spray, but I'll give it a shot. Oh yeah, I guess it does. Little jelly pen. So now I've got a couple that are glittery and a bunch that are not. I actually have quite a few more to get through, so I'm going to finish these up and clean up. But that is what I have for my Distress Oxide Galaxy backgrounds. I hope that it helps, and feel free to leave a question down below if you have any questions about this. It's just a lot of trial and error on my part, and I do try to, like I said, I do try to develop methods where I can kind of mass produce something for my card making. Thanks very much, and take care. Bye-bye.